What's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with Drink a Beer and Play a Game, and today we're going to be checking out Aliens Fireteam Elite, which actually is a brand new game that Jim just tried.
Yeah, so this kind of got bashed on release, so that's always a good sign. But we're going to check it out and let you know what we think about it.
And you can check the link below to see how Daddy saved Jim throughout the game.
Blah, 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 blah. I'm holding the beer! Released in August of 2021, this was developed and published by Cold Iron Studios. It came out on Windows, the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox One, and the Xbox series of consoles. The X and S. God, I hate this naming convention. But, yeah. So basically, this is kind of set as a sequel to the Aliens trilogy, but kind of not, kind of made up some stuff, but it also ties in a lot of stuff from Aliens Isolation and from the sequels and from the Prometheus era of prequels. It's a lot of fan service. It's kind of cool, but it's also kind of a mess. Let's get into it.
The graphics. It's actually a really odd thing to talk about with this game because on one hand, as you walk through the levels, some of them are so large and there's a lot of great details that you're going to be like, wow, this game looks really good. And then you're going to realize there's almost no effort put into the actual presentation, and there's basically no cutscenes. The little bit of dialogue you get with any of the NPCs throw me off completely because why the hell are none of their lips moving? Hey, if this was an early 360 game, I could have appreciated it. But come on, really? Like, there's just no lips moving here. It just seems kind of lazy. Now, all the xenomorphs look good for the tiny second you can see them, but there are some major issues. And as a full disclaimer, Jim and I, we're playing it on the Xbox Ones, and we're talking about the originals. So we don't have the luxury of seeing it on newer consoles where it maybe looks a little bit better. I know I had some issues of graphical slowdown if I was using like the flamethrower or I had an explosion and too much was going on at the screen. I almost chopped that up to my system not being up to date. Still, I have to say Jim and I thought it looked pretty damn good. It's definitely not perfect. It has plenty of issues. It just seems like it's maybe a generation behind with a lot of great detail from a licensed series. So I gave it a 7. Jim gave it a 6. Definitely not perfect, but...
Hey, Brian, use a flamethrower.
But Jim, I don't want my game to crash again.
Every time.
It was so goddamn annoying, and for that reason, I'm adding 3 beers right off the bat. Because this is one of those games that no matter where you are in the level, if you die, you restart it all over again. And some of these levels can take 30 to 40 minutes to complete. So enjoy those beers.
The sound. You know what? If you're a fan of the Alien franchise, you're going to love the sound package in this game. Like, this is total fan service. A lot of the music, and especially all the gun and xenomorph sound effects, they're all basically ripped right from the movies. So everything will be very familiar to you if you like the franchise. And the music is very atmospheric. So you don't always have music, sometimes you just have ambient noise, and when the music kicks in, it's appropriate, especially during those more heavy horde sections. If there's a big knock, it's going to be that it's not very memorable. Now, I believe a lot of the tunes are ripped right from the movies, so they do their job well. But it's just like, you know, that state of affairs of gaming today where it's more about orchestral and ambiance instead of just being like, you know, a banger kind of track. Which is fine. And also credit to the voice acting where even though the voice acting, you know, it's not coming from like the most amazing cast in the world, it's perfectly fine, even though you don't see the characters talking at all. So everything about it's like a pretty solid package, and if you're a fan of Aliens, you're going to like what you get here. So Brian gave it an 8 and I gave it a 7, and we're just going to add 1 beer for the slightly lackluster music.
The control. Once again, this is a weird one because you're a third-person shooter, kind of like Gears of War, but the gameplay is Left 4 Dead. So if you combine both of them together, it is almost perfect in how they set up the control in this game. So if you hold in the L stick, you can run, B lets you roll, Y lets you switch your weapons, and you have different abilities. One is for your main primary ability, and the second is like a secondary equipment. Everything just flows really nicely. There is no lag when it comes to input. And it's really tough. I'm struggling because on one hand, there's a part of me that goes, something still feels a little bit off, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I really do think, though, this is as close to perfect as you could get if you had a Gears of War inspired Left 4 Dead clone, if that makes any sense. So honestly, aside from the slowdown, which is not really an issue of the control, the shooting was perfect. The lining up your shots and everything just felt right. So when it comes to scores, I gave it an 8, Jim gave it a 9. We really love the control, and it's one of the better aspects of the game itself. So when it comes to beers, I'm not going to add any. The control was really solid.
The gameplay. So Brian already kind of touched on this, but this game really is just kind of like Left 4 Dead set in the Alien universe. And that's not a bad thing at all if you're people like us. So the bulk of the game comes down to the campaign mode, where basically you go through 12 different missions, and I mean, if you've ever played these survivally kind of type games, you just go from point A to point B, and along the way you go around searching for hidden items and special caches and special intel little pickups, which can add to your experience and give you a little bit more of the background story in the game, which is always a nice touch. And the hidden crates give you special drops, which are all randomized, but there's so much upgrading and grinding of equipment that you can do in this game. It all kind of goes towards that and helps you out in the long run. But the main crux of the game is, like I said, point A to point B, and along the way you'll fight a couple enemies here and there, interspersed with a bunch of horde sections. And of course, every section ends with a gigantic horde, survival thing where you either have to escape by the end or basically kill everything and survive to escape. And it does get pretty samey, like every mission kind of is the same, but they do kind of switch it up a bit, because after a couple levels you fight different enemies. So eventually you fight synthetics, and it kind of just becomes almost a cover-based army shooter, like against people, where it's perfectly like Gears of War. So the xenomorph sections are definitely more like Left 4 Dead, with your fast-moving drones and your special guys who can just pounce on you out of nowhere, and then you have the strong guys, where the synths are basically, synthetic humans where you're just in these big shootout sections. And I know there's people out there who kind of hate these sections, but I think it changes it up just enough to feel a little bit different. And then eventually you actually get some other enemies from a different section of the universe, which feels a little bit different as well. So a lot of these levels do have their own feel, which is nice. Now, like I said, there's only 12 levels, so you can blow through them technically in 6 hours, but you're not going to beat them all in your first try every time, because this game is a hard son of a bitch. And if you're playing by yourself, I cannot stress enough, play it on easy, because even on easy, it is a hard sucker. And the biggest problem comes down to the fact that you have 2 AI helpers with you on your team, and it's not like the AI is bad. The AI is actually surprisingly decent, both for the aliens and for your robot helpers, but they don't level up. So they're bare bones characters who aren't going to be able to help you out that much in the long run. If you want a chance of beating this game, especially on anything more than standard, you're going to need to have human helpers with you who are also leveled up. Like, this game is meant to be an online, focus, play with your buddies, play with randos online kind of deal. And it's all about grinding, and there's so much grinding. You get 6 different player classes, and they all do play a little bit differently, and each one of them has 6 levels of grinding that you can get through to give yourself more abilities, and you unlock a bunch of different guns for each one, which also have 4 different levels of grinding and upgrading for each one of them as well. So everything that you play will go towards grinding and upgrading and grinding and upgrading. So there's a lot to do. It just really depends on how much you want to put into it. And there's 2 other game modes, which is Horde mode, where you just go against hordes and hordes and hordes of, different enemies. And there's a recently released point defense mode, which is kind of like Horde mode, but you're also defending and repairing 3 different points on the map. And I'll be honest, we didn't spend that much time with these modes. We basically just stuck to the campaign mode, but it's cool that you have options here. Now, of course, I have to mention once again, this game is buggy. you'll be at the end of levels and the game will crash on you. If you ever think about using the flamethrower during a horde section, your game will crash on you. There are sections where Brian and I were playing together, and we'll be frozen for a good 10-15 seconds in place, hoping that it didn't crash out on us. And there's times where enemies can glitch through walls and just, glitch. So, it's kind of a mess, but it's still just really fun. So, we can't take away that fun factor from this, and it really just... it does a good job of combining that Left 4 Dead and Gears of War feel, so we both gave it 7s. And when it comes to beer, I'm just going to give it 2 beers. 1 for, unfortunately, all the game-breaking bugs, and 2 for the overemphasis on grinding, even though that does kind of give you a reason to come back.
The originality I can keep fast because there's both almost nothing here and then there's a lot. So on one hand, Jim already pointed out, this game has taken elements from Gears of War, Left 4 Dead, and kind of combined them. And that's exactly where I feel like this game feels original. After playing so many Aliens games, this is the first one that really has that horde-based mentality, and it feels like a new experience. And quite honestly, it is by far the best 2-player Aliens game out there, where you're doing exactly what you'd want to do in an Aliens game, which is facing hordes and hordes of these aliens. Mixing in the idea of these synthetics gave it enough of a different feel, as Jim mentioned, but like I said, it's not a brand new feeling. So there's new elements to the Alien franchise, even in gaming, but it's not brand new gaming mechanics. So when it comes to scores, I gave it a 5, Jim gave it a 3. I have obviously felt there was a little bit more of an impact on how the game felt to just Aliens versus just the overall gaming mechanics in general. So when it comes to beer, I'm going to add 1 just because, on one hand, I like the different feel they had, but I still think they could have used things like motion tracker and things from the franchise to make it feel a little more unique to the Aliens franchise.
Alright, replayability we can keep short because we already basically talked about everything. So you get the 3 main game modes, you get the 6 different player classes, and the buttload of grinding that goes along with all of them. And then you also get the online component where, playing with a buddy or randos is always kind of fun, so it can give you more reasons to come back. There's a lot of stuff here, surprisingly, even for as kind of bare bones as it seems on the surface. So we both gave it 7s. And when it comes to beer, I'm just going to add 1 beer for the kind of forced reliance on online play.
So overall, the game is nowhere near perfect. It has a ton of flaws, but it's a lot of fun.
Just like playing with the toy. But yeah, no, I mean, like, this game's a tough one because it's a mess. The game's a fucking mess, but it's so much goddamn fun.
I almost don't want to defend it, but you can't help but enjoy if you're a fan of the Aliens. Let me say that.
You shouldn't buy it.
No.
Like, you shouldn't buy it for more than $20. Like, if you have Game Pass, which is on right now as of this recording, if you ever had an inkling in playing it, download it now and play it now so you don't have to spend, like, any more on it.
Yeah.
But it's still just fun.
Jim mentioned it during our podcast. It hit all the perfect elements of, like, a Left 4 Dead.
It did it better than Back 4 Blood.
Yes. And it just, like, the wave-based levels are a little bit too long, like, which we already talked about, but at the end of the day, there still is something fun when you're playing with a buddy, and we emphasize that enough during this review, but it's so much fun when you're playing with a friend, and
it's almost a requirement if you want to finish it, but which is a flaw, but yeah. I mean, like I said, it's got a lot of flaws, but like it's still just fun.
I mean, at the end of the day,
I'm so torn.
At the end of the day, we can kind of understand the hate. We think it's over-warranted.
And we've also had a couple months of patches at this point, but it's still a mess. It's still a buggy mess.
Yeah. So we both gave it 7s. It's definitely above average.
And that's probably being generous because we played it for, well, especially me, basically played it for free.
Yeah.
So.
And when we combined all of our scores, it's a 7.2. The thing is, you can't deny the sound is good. The graphics are good, even though there's those goofy things. But the control is really tight with this game. And once again, playing with a buddy,
it's just fun.
Yeah.
And if you like Alien, like it's all fan service.
And especially because there's so many different classes, you're going to be able to keep coming back and trying it as a new character. And I really emphasize the, is it really new or not? But there is something to keep coming back to if you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, they play differently enough where your experience will be different, even though the base content is very limited.
Yeah. So, like Jim said, don't rush out. Don't buy it. Don't spend more than $20 if you got Game Pass. It's a definitely, I would say, a must-try if you get it for free. With that, you let us know what you think below. But otherwise, hope you guys enjoy it, and cheers.
Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah.
When it comes to beer pairing, I'm going to go with the Lucky SOB from Flying Dog Brewery. This is an Irish red ale at 5.5%, so you know it's going to be real easy to drink, have just a little bit of sweetness, and honestly, you're going to need something kind of light to get through this game. And just like the name of this beer, you're going to need to be a Lucky SOB in order to finish this one off. So grab a 6-pack, sit back, and enjoy yourself. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. Cheers, guys.